Welcome to the video explanation of the January test of the Summerfield Open. Question number 1. How much would you spend on cigarettes during your lifetime if you started smoking at age 18, smoked 2 packs a day until you're 70, with each pack costing $5.25? This is a simple multiplication and subtraction problem. First, you need to figure out how many years you'll be smoking. 70 minus 18 is 52 years. Multiply that by 365 days in a year. Multiply that by $5.25 a pack, and multiply that by 2 packs a day. Take 52 times 365 times 5.25 times 2, and you get $199,290. Just as an aside, that is an incredible amount of money. Obviously, the worst thing about smoking is what it does to your health, but it's also incredibly expensive. $200,000 for a smoking habit. It's just crazy. Question number 2. If you have $100 and you earn 2% interest annually, how much will you have after 5 years? This is a compound interest question that we're all used to by now. And what we're going to do is we're going to show a simple equation that we'll use for these from now on. Take what you start with, multiply that by 1 plus your rate, raised to the number of years, and that will equal what you end with. Just to simplify writing this, S times 1 plus R raised to the Y equals E. Now let's look at all these variables, and what do we know? We know S is $100, we're starting with $100. We know R is 2%, we know Y is 5 years, and we don't know E. We can plug all those numbers into the equation, and we get 100 times 1 plus 0.02 raised to the 5th equals E. As an aside, a few of you asked on today's test, where's the percentage button on your calculator? You don't need a percentage button. Remember, you can write any percentage as a decimal, so 2% is the same thing as 0.02. That's a really good skill to have when you want to get better at math, because you'll use percentages a lot and you need to write them as decimals. So getting back to our equation, we can simplify that. 100 times 1.02 raised to the 5th equals E, and then we can just put that in our calculator. 1.02 x to the y 5 times 100 equals $110.41. Question number 3. My electric bill is calculated with the formula B equals 15 plus 0.1 E, where B is the amount of the bill and E is the electricity I used. What is my bill if I used 1,200 kilowatt hours, or if E equaled 1,200? Well, my equation is B equals 15 plus 0.1 E. I don't know what B is, but I do know what E is, 1,200. So I can put that into the equation. B equals 15 plus 0.1 times 1,200. And then I can just put that in my calculator. 0.1 times 1,200 plus 15 equals 135. And that's your answer. How many left-handed girls with dark hair live in the United States? There are 330 million people in the US, 51% of whom are female, 9% of whom are left-handed, and 68% of whom have dark hair. So we want to know how many Americans there are who are girls, 51%, that are left-handed, 9%, that have dark hair, 68%. So we start with 330 million people. And we take that 330 million and multiply it by 0.51. Remember, 0.51 is the same as 51%. And we get 168.3 million. There are 168.3 million girls in the country. We take that and multiply it by 0.9%. 0.9, which is 9%. Remember, 0.09 is 9%. Multiply that and we get 15,147,000. There are 15.147 million left-handed girls in the country. But we aren't quite done yet. We got to do the hair. We take that 15 million number, multiply it by 0.68, and we get 10,299,960. And that's your answer. And we got that by taking the 330 million we started with and multiplying it by each of those percentages. 51% times 9% times 68%. And just in case you're wondering, you could have done that in any order. So long as you multiply all three percentages, if you multiplied the 68% first, it would have given you the same answer as we got. 10.3 million. Question number 5. The large square has a side of 12 inches and a large square has a side of 12 inches and the smaller square has a side of 2 inches. How many small squares could you fit in a large square? So remember, the area of a square is the length squared. The large square has an area of 12 squared, or 144, and the small square has an area of 2 squared, or 4. Then it's a pretty simple division problem. How many squares with an area of 4 can fit in a square with an area of 144? You take 144 divided by 4, and that gives you 36, and that's your answer. The last question, number 6. This was the hardest question of the test. I can invest money and get a 9% return annually. How much do I need to start with if after 8 years I want to end with $6,000? Remember our equation, S times 1 plus R raised to the Y equals E. This time we don't know S. Before we always knew S. This time we don't know S. That's what we're trying to find. But we do know R, that's 9%. We know Y is 8 years. And we know E is 6,000. We end with 6,000. Plug all those numbers into our equation and we get S times 1 plus 0.09 raised to the 8th equals 6,000. We simplify that to S times 1.09 raised to the 8th equals 6,000. We calculate that 1.09 raised to the 8th is 1.993. So we have S times 1.993 equals 6,000. We divide both sides by 1.993 and we get S equals $3,011.20. Now here's a bonus question because I love you guys so much. As I said during the test today, I promise you the February test is going to have a question like this. I started with $1,000 and I invested it for 8 years. After 8 years, I ended with $1,700. What was the return I got during those 8 years? So we have our equation, S times 1 plus R raised to the Y equals E. And this time we don't know R. Like I said, I promise you there's going to be one of these questions where you're going to have to figure out R. So we know S, we're starting with $1,000. We know Y, we're going to do this for 8 years. And we know E, we're going to end with $1,700. What is R? So we put all those numbers into the equation and we have 1,000 times 1 plus R raised to the 8th equals 1,700. Like most algebra equations, we want to get the variable, in this case R, by itself. The first step is pretty easy. We divide both sides by 1,000 and we get 1 plus R raised to the 8th equals 1.7. But now we're a little stuck. We have this exponent 8. And how do we get rid of it? We know in all algebra equations you have to do the same thing to both sides. What can we do to both sides to get rid of this exponent? Well, let's look to the side for a second to get a clue. If we have x to the 5th, x raised to the 5th power, so x times itself 5 times, and then we took that number and raised it to the 1/5, 1 over 5, those 5s are going to cancel each other out. And x to the 5th raised to the 1/5 equals x. So now we can go back to our equation. So we have 1 plus r raised to the 8th equals 1.7. What can we do to both sides to get rid of that 8? We can raise both sides to the 1 over 8. And remember, those 8s are going to cancel each other out. The 8 and the 1 over 8 are going to cancel each other out. And that's going to leave us with 1 plus r equals 1.7 raised to the 1/8. Now you might be asking, how do I do an exponent raised to a fraction? And the answer is just the same as you do raised to a whole number. You figure out what the fraction is. 1 divided by 8 is 0.125. You write that number down on a piece of paper. And then you take 1.7, x to the y, 0.125, which is the same as 1.7 raised to the 1/8. And that gives you 1.0686. So getting back to our equation, we have 1 plus r equals 1.0686. This gets back to a real easy algebra question. We subtract 1 from both sides, and we get r equals 0.0686, or 6.86%. And that's your answer. So if I started with $1,000 and in 8 years I ended with $1,700, my interest rate had to be 6.86%. And as I said, I promise you, there's going to be a question on the next test where you're going to need to figure out R. So great job, everyone. As I've always said in all these tests, these are not easy tests. These tests are no joke. And I write these tests at the 6th to 8th grade level. So just the fact that you are taking these tests and working hard to learn this stuff shows how awesome you are at maths. And I really want to applaud you for that. If you're getting questions right, all the better. This is not easy stuff. So I really commend you and applaud you, and I'm so pleased that you guys are doing this. Our next test is going to be on February 21st at Summerfield Elementary at 3:15 p.m. and I will see you there.